What if I told you that the land of the free was sold a long time ago, not to another country or some foreign king, but to a small group of the world's most powerful bankers? And what if I told you this happened way back in 1913, and you're still paying the price for it today? Every time you look at the price of gas, groceries, or rent and wonder why your dollar just doesn't go as far, you're feeling the effects of a decision made over a century ago. This feeling, this constant financial pressure, isn't just bad luck or a fluke in the economy. It's the result of a deliberate, carefully crafted design. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the biggest secrets in modern history, the federal truth. We're going to expose how America's financial destiny was hijacked by a private cartel that operates in the shadows, all while hiding behind the most patriotic-sounding name imaginable, the Federal Reserve. This isn't just an American story. The system born on a secluded island in 1913 has now wrapped its tentacles around the entire global economy. So, if you're ready to understand the real rules of the money game, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to learn will change how you see the world forever. Our story begins in 1910. Under the darkness of night, a private train car slips away from a station in Hoboken, New Jersey. The passengers on board are a who's who of the financial elite. We're talking about Senator Nelson Aldrich, a man deeply connected to the Rockefeller family; Paul Warburg, an envoy from the legendary European banking dynasties; Henry Davison, a partner at J.P. Morgan & Co., and Frank Vanderlip, the president of National City Bank, which you might know today as Citibank. They were sworn to secrecy, even using only their first names to avoid being identified. Their destination was Jekyll Island, a private, exclusive resort off the coast of Georgia, owned by titans of industry. Their mission? To draft a plan that would give them complete control over America's money supply. They called their proposal the Aldrich Plan. But let's be clear, it was a banker's blueprint for a financial takeover. They understood a fundamental truth. Whoever controls the creation of money controls the entire nation. Now, fast forward just 3 years to 1913. The plan is ready. But how do you get it passed without raising suspicion? You wait. You wait until December 23rd, just 2 days before Christmas, when Congress is practically empty and most lawmakers are already back home with their families. In that quiet moment, the Federal Reserve Act was pushed through and hastily signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson. Wilson himself would later express profound regret, stating, "I have unwittingly ruined my country." Think about that. A bill that reshaped the entire financial future of the nation, passed with almost no debate or public scrutiny. Sound familiar? We see this pattern repeated over and over again, where massive, life-altering legislation is rushed through when no one is paying attention. Before 1913, America's currency was largely backed by physical gold and silver. It was tangible, finite, and real. You couldn't just create it out of thin air. The Federal Reserve Act changed everything. It introduced something called elastic currency. This meant the money supply could be expanded or contracted based on the so-called needs of the economy. But here's the billion-dollar question. Who gets to decide what those needs are? The very same bankers who designed the system, of course. Suddenly, they had the power to print money. And when the Fed creates trillions of dollars overnight like they have in recent years, who do you think benefits the most? It's not you or me. It's the big banks who get the money first, the super rich whose assets inflate in value, and the financial elite who wrote the rules in the first place. From the Great Depression in 1929 to the Great Recession in 2008, the playbook has remained exactly the same. First, a crisis emerges, often fueled by risky behavior from the banks themselves. Then, the Fed steps in, flooding the system with newly created money, or liquidity. And finally, in the chaos, the biggest players consolidate their power, buying up smaller competitors and assets for pennies on the dollar. Every single time, the wealth and power become a little more concentrated at the very top. The public? We get bailouts for the billionaires and inflation for breakfast. Sound familiar yet? You see, 1913 wasn't just about creating a central bank. It was about installing a system that privatizes profits and socializes losses. A system where money itself is created as debt. Every single dollar that comes into existence is loaned into circulation, meaning it's owed back to the banking system with interest. It's a perfect, inescapable trap. Once this debt-based system was locked in, the rest of the 20th century was simply about perfecting its execution. Now, here is the twist that most people never learn, the part that sounds like a conspiracy theory but is actually documented fact. The Federal Reserve is not federal in the way you think of a government agency. And here's the kicker: it holds no actual reserves of its own. It is a privately owned banking cartel, given a legal monopoly over the creation of money by Congress. It's not owned or directly controlled by the U.S. government. The system is made up of 12 regional Federal Reserve banks. And who owns the shares in these regional banks? The private member banks in their respective districts. That's right. The very institutions that the Fed is supposed to regulate are its shareholders. It's like letting the players in a casino own the house, write all the rules for the games, and then sending the bill to the taxpayers every time their risky bets go bad and the house loses. And that is precisely what has happened time and time again. In 1929, after the Fed fueled the roaring 20s with easy credit, the stock market crashed, leading to the Great Depression. In 2008, after years of loose monetary policy encouraged reckless lending, the subprime mortgage market imploded, triggering a global financial crisis. And each time, what did the Federal Reserve do? It stepped in to save the economy by bailing out the same giant financial institutions that caused the problems, all while Main Street was left to suffer. But their most powerful and secretive tool is something called open market operations. It sounds boring and technical, but it's the mechanism they use to manipulate the money supply day to day, to quietly steer the economy, and to systematically transfer wealth from the working class to the financial elite. It is the engine of modern debt slavery. And the man who perfected this system, the architect who turned this power into a science, you won't believe his name or the legacy he left behind. The paper trail is wilder than you can possibly imagine, and we're going to break it all down. Ever heard of Mariner Eccles? He was the Fed chairman back in the 1930s, a name most history books forget. But he championed a revolutionary idea, one that secretly shapes every dollar you earn and spend. He institutionalized the concept that the government could borrow without limit forever as long as the Federal Reserve was there to buy the debt. In simpler terms, print the money first, figure out the justification later. This mechanism is called monetized debt, and it's the hidden engine of our entire modern financial world. So how does this magic trick work? Imagine the U.S. Treasury needs cash. It issues bonds, which are basically IOUs. Who buys them? The Federal Reserve, using money it creates out of thin air. Just like that, new dollars are born. These dollars then flow into the banking system. But it doesn't stop there. Thanks to something called fractional reserve lending, banks can lend out up to 10 times more money than they actually hold in reserves. Every single loan creates new money, all of it backed not by gold or silver, but by the promise of future debt. Think about this. By the time you finish watching this video, over $1 billion will have been created from nothing. And every single one of those dollars has interest attached, owed to someone. This is the core equation our system is built on. Money equals debt. And what does debt equal? Control. Let's look at the consequences. Between 1913, the year the Fed was created, and today, the US dollar has lost over 97% of its purchasing power. That loaf of bread your great-grandparents bought for a nickel in 1913 now costs you $2.50, maybe more. We call it inflation, but let's be honest, it's a systematic erosion of your wealth through the expansion of the money supply. The result is an economy completely addicted to credit, a government that can't function without borrowing trillions, and a population quietly enslaved by the invisible chains of interest payments. The numbers are staggering. In 1913, the total U.S. debt was just under $3 billion. By 1980, it hit $900 billion. By the 2008 crisis, it was $10 trillion. And today, it's soaring past $34 trillion. Notice a pattern? Each massive spike in debt follows a major crisis. And every crisis is met with the same solution. The Federal Reserve cuts interest rates or injects massive amounts of liquidity. It's a self-perpetuating feedback loop, engineered to ensure that you, your children, and your grandchildren never truly escape the cycle of debt. Every time you swipe a credit card, sign for a mortgage, or even pay your taxes, you are feeding this very engine. An engine designed and built over a century ago. But wait. It gets even better. Wall Street took the Fed's model of creating money from debt and put it on steroids. They built a towering empire of derivatives, credit default swaps, and synthetic assets. By 2008, the estimated value of this shadow financial world exceeded $700 trillion. For perspective, that's more than 35 times the size of the entire U.S. economy. And when this house of cards inevitably came crashing down, who bailed them out? The Fed, using your future earnings as collateral. We saw the cycle repeat itself in 2020. In just a few months, 6.5 trillion new dollars were printed. The stock market rocketed to all-time highs. But what happened to Main Street? Small businesses closed and families struggled. Why the disconnect? Because printing money doesn't help the average person. It inflates the value of assets, stocks, real estate, fine art. It protects capital, not labor. And that isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature. The Federal Reserve calls it monetary policy. But in practice, it's a controlled demolition of the middle class. They've engineered a world where owning assets makes you rich, but earning a living wage makes you progressively poorer. Every generation since 1913 has inherited this financial curse, the illusion of prosperity, built on a crumbling foundation of debt. And the cruelest twist? It's all draped in the flag of patriotism. The very same dollar bill that says, "In God we trust," is, in reality, a debt instrument issued and controlled by a private institution. The uncomfortable truth is this: America didn't just lose the gold standard in 1971, it lost its financial sovereignty back in 1913. The Federal Reserve became an invisible government, unelected, unaccountable, and untouchable. When those bankers gathered on Jekyll Island, they didn't just buy political influence. They bought time. Your time. Every hour you work is taxed, then inflated, then diluted to pay the interest on a system designed solely to keep itself alive. And now, we're entering the next chapter. The digital chapter. You've probably heard the term central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. This is programmable money. It's the same system of control upgraded for the 21st century. If the Federal Reserve was the original trap, CBDCs are the digital lock on the cage. Because when money becomes code, the potential for control becomes absolute. The lesson of 1913 isn't just some dusty old history. It's a flashing red warning light that we, as a society, keep choosing to ignore. So I'll leave you with a question to think about. Are we any wiser now than we were a century ago? Or are we just walking down the same exact path in nicer suits? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you think. If you believe people deserve to know the truth about how their money really works, share this video and make sure you subscribe. Until then, stay awake, stay informed, and never ever stop questioning the system.